Nicholls, who is our resident who has just returned from Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I think you've been back now.
I got in at noon yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're still fresh with the. Excellent.
Got to my apartment out of customs at 1, got to my apartment by 2, and then slept.
And what time did you wake up?
I woke up at 8, then went back to bed.
Okay.
Tried to go back to bed.
8 last night?
Yeah, I woke up at 8 p.m.
Ah, okay.
And then kind of 8, and then went back to sleep, woke up at 4 a.m.
Okay. Well,
And then I've been up since.
it's good to get you on a right off the cusp of your return while everything is.
You got it.
So we have a list of questions here. We'll start out with them. I'm going to read you number 1, and then we'll see where we go from there. You spent some time learning about Cambodia and its history, particularly about the Khmer Rouge. Was this something you were aware of before going, and to what degree? Did you feel like this is a long question. Did you feel like this history was still present within the culture and society? Wow. I'm going to
Start with the first one.
what was your biggest concern before going? Let me actually start you from the back of the one there. What was your biggest concern before going?
Biggest concern? I don't know if I had a concern, really. I was ready to go. Whatever happened, I would just deal with it. So I guess my biggest concern was flying, because I don't like to fly in general. So that was all I was worried about. I wasn't worried about what was going to happen. I was just going to roll with it. That was my outlook.
How long did you have to prepare for before you went? How long did you know?
I think it was last year, December, maybe.
So you had time to prepare.
Yeah, but I didn't really prepare until I met you guys like a month before.
Any
Because it didn't really feel real until like the week before.
Mhm.
And then then I guess I freaked out a little bit. Like, this is real. I'm gonna leave. I probably should pack.
Even though you didn't have your bags?
Even though it was all moot for the first few days.
So, did you have any preconceived ideas about Cambodia? You know, Vietnam, of course, we associate with war. Even to this day, they don't associate us with their war. But is all of that kind of...
I would say, honestly, I was pretty ignorant to the history in Cambodia. Like, I knew about Khmer Rouge a little, genocide, horrible things, but its depth, no, very ignorant. I knew the person who recommended me, Sana Musasama, I knew a little bit from her about some of the sex trade that goes on there, some of the horrible things that she works with there. Other than that, it was the history of Cambodia was unknown to me. So, I mean, I was interested to go and learn the history.
So, give me your reaction when you first got there. You get off the plane and...
I was excited, yeah. I was worried because of the plane changes. Like I had said in my blog, I figured the bag wouldn't show up, so I freaked out a little bit, but the contact, Meta, that was there, calmed me down a little bit. She spoke to some people, and that kind of allowed me to realize that I was suddenly in Cambodia. And it was just simple things like acknowledging, like, wow, the traffic is really crazy, or I have no idea what anybody's saying. I'm really tired, I'm really hungry. And that's it. It was all kind of blur.
Okay.
So I got there, I think I got there at 8 p.m. So the sun had already set, so it was hard to see much. So it was just really what was near me.
Okay, so then let's go to the next morning.
So I got sick that night after I ate, so I went to bed feeling pretty down about the situation, but I woke up feeling better, and it was light out, so I finally got to see something. And outside of the home you guys had me staying in was this beautiful, I think it's like a school for monks, so there was a pagoda right out the window. It was a beautiful architecture, and I'd never seen one before, so it really energized me about the whole situation. And I woke up, looked around at the apartment I was in, and was like, oh my God, where am I?
So it sounds to a certain extent like the exotica started to overtake you because it's a place that's so full of different foods, different smells, different things.
It's like, yeah, visually completely different. The pace was much faster, and the traffic was overwhelming. I think all that combined was what hit me first.
The traffic issue is an interesting thing. I saw that you described it in your blog of trying to get across the street.
It's hard to walk.
It's a
Phnom
scary
Penh.
thing.
And that was something I guess I was shocked about, because we walk everywhere here, and I figured, I guess that's one thing I assumed that they would do there. I have no problem walking around the city, just taking it all in, but it really is difficult to walk anywhere. Where I was living, I mean, it was quieter streets, but when I tried to go out to some of the I think it's the National Monument, or the Palace. I mean, it's like everybody in Phnom Penh owns a scooter and drives it at the same time. And there's no real, I mean, I guess there's a system that I started to figure out later. It's just they all kind of cruise steadily and watch out for each other. But it's overwhelming to try to navigate that by foot.
Yeah, you described walking across the street and just kind of steeling yourself up for going and
Yeah, you
not
kind of,
trying to.
I researched it for a little bit. I watched many local people cross the street, and then I was shocked that's how it was done. And I just did it. And really, you rely on the person driving to not hit you. That's pretty much it.
Well, it's kind of reversing the responsibility from here,
Yeah.
which is kind of nice.
Well, nice. It's a little intimidating. A little scary.
I don't think we saw any accidents while we were there.
I saw none in Phnom Penh, but when I traveled outside, I saw a few like tuk-tuk accidents that had gone off the road. But other than that, no.
Is that the way you found yourself getting around mostly with the tuk-tuks?
I started out primarily with tuk-tuks, and then I spoke to some people at some of my scheduled events, and I talked about only traveling by tuk-tuk, and they said, why don't you use moto? You know, it's like $1. No big deal. It's cheap and quick.
On the back of a motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I tried that a couple times, but it's a little intimidating without a helmet.
Yeah, I did actually see one accident when a moto was crossing a railroad track at an angle.
Yeah.
And, you know, at an angle, you don't necessarily go over things, you slide. And,
Yeah. I think I did it 2 or 3 times, and what stopped me from doing it any longer was the intersections. Taking a moto through an intersection was the scariest event, I think, in Phnom Penh. I think you feel a little more secure at tuk-tuk.
Oh yeah, I think so.
And just seeing the other motos come at you and no one really stopping until almost the last minute, that's it. Tuk-tuks.
So when artists travel, they tend to have an artist sensibility. We tend to be observers more than participators. But at the risk of not participating, you lose a lot. How did you feel your immersion into the culture was? Were you an observer? Did you find yourself becoming a participator as often as?
I think I'm by nature an observer. I kind of like stray away from putting myself engaging people. But I think that's what the benefit of having that schedule was. It forced me to just get in there and do it. Whereas normally I probably, like a lot of things on the list, I probably wouldn't have even tried to do. But going to Cambodia on my own, I never would have taken a cooking class or gone to boxing. And I might not even have found some of the galleries that you guys sent me to. So I found it very helpful.
Well, what we find is that a lot of residents go through this. And on some level, I feel it's a problem in the art community that we tend to not be the participators, that we tend to be the observers to the point where we aren't experiencing life as much as observing it and trying to figure out how we're going to comment on it. And so we get a lot of people that are reluctant to do things that are the kinds of things that you would say to somebody else, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there's this reticence. Did you feel a change in your willingness to try things? Will that continue a little bit?
I don't think it was a change. I think I've just come to realize that I have to force myself. Just ignore my feelings that I just want to go in my studio and work and just focus on my own stuff. Just force myself. That's what I've learned. Is just I've got to choose to do things and make myself do them. And I think that's good that I learned that. Instead of deluding myself, I guess.
I think that's something that we all talk about. We travel in the art world a lot sometimes, and we go to a place, and maybe we're doing a show at a gallery, so we interact with the gallery, the hotel we're staying at, and the one or two restaurants that are proximate. And we end up not really getting into the culture, and sometimes artists are more insensitive to the situation than regular tourists, who are kind of more willing to do a lot of these things. You know, we kind of have that sense of being a chronicler, I guess, more than that participant. Give me a few examples. The boxing was a good one.
Where
Cooking.
it kind of moved me into like a tourist mode rather than just an artist.
I would prefer to say a participatory mode than a tourist
okay.
mode. Yeah.
Yes, the boxing, the cooking.
What'd you learn from the boxing other than how to?
Other than that, I liked it. I mean,
That's good.
yeah, I learned that I never thought I would. I've never been interested in like learning how to fight or like watching fights. Like you guys sent me to 2 kickboxing matches.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actual proper name for it. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the atmosphere of the people there, getting really into it, and I think that got me more into it. I don't know, just the way you can use your body like that. Like it wasn't just boxing; it was throwing elbows and uppercut elbows, and I don't know. I just never thought about it. Kicking, the proper way to kick someone. I found it interesting, and I never thought I would find that interesting.
So in the next couple of days.
Now it might be different when someone's hitting me in the face. So I like it to the point where I'm not getting punched in the face yet.
Well, you always have to initiate first. So when you're on the streets here,
Oh yeah,
kick first.
kick first. I don't know if that's what they taught me, but
No.
New York rules: kick first.
Okay, and
What else?
the cooking and the boxing, kind of 2 different issues. Do you cook?
A little. Not. I wouldn't say. I mean, I make food at home, but I wouldn't say I make really nice things.
Did that also give you that sense where you want to?
I mean, it was just trying something new. It gave me confidence to be able to approach, a recipe. Even though it sounds simple, making food from a recipe, but like this was complicated. It wasn't as simple as throwing this, that, and the other together. It was a complicated recipe of taking a food and have to prepare it a certain way, or it'll make your throat inflamed if you don't prepare it right. So it was kind of so complicated. I feel like I can just approach other things pretty simply now. And I'm going to make the stuff I learned there as well for my wife.
You let me know when you want us to come over.
This is how it happens, though. I mentioned it once. That's what happened in Cambodia. I mentioned it once that I was going to cook for a couple people, and then it just spreads. And then I'm cooking for 10 people.
That sounds nice.
It was nice. It was rough, though. Well, it was rough only in the sense that I found going to the markets quite difficult. Like getting the food I needed to make the recipes, because I found the markets to be really intense. And quite different than just going to a grocery store. Like finding the right person who had the right things, or finding the tofu because no one had tofu. Like one person in the entire market had tofu, and no one could understand me, and they would just laugh at me mostly. So it was. I think I spent 2 hours getting ingredients to make dinner for some of the people I met. And I think that was at the Oruso market, or I don't know how it's pronounced.
Okay.
And it's just this vast market, and that was difficult. I think that was the most difficult part of making that meal, was getting all the ingredients together, and and not being able to say, is this mint, or is this, I don't even know what the word is trying to communicate that. So I came down to me like smelling things, and trying to get a few people help me. The ones who would laugh and then help me. I guess it was weird seeing a Westerner shop, I guess.
Did you find that you were the only Westerner that you were around a lot of the time?
Yeah, I would say the majority of the time. Occasionally, like the cooking class, there was just me and another person, an Australian woman. So some of the events, like Siem Reap, there was a lot of Westerns, and that was probably out of the whole trip the most I saw Western people was Siem Reap in the temples, which was weird. It was because I think I was in Phnom Penh for maybe a week and a half before I went up to Siem Reap. Well, no, then I went to Kampong Shanang. So it was 2 weeks before I really saw a bunch of Westerners again. And it was weird. It was just a weird experience. It was the first time I think I had that experience of noticing I'm around Westerners. It was different.
People that look like you.
Yeah. Oh, I understand what someone's saying. I forgot what that's like.
Yeah, that's nice. One of the things that we do is we feel that a lot of the art has migrated from the art world into lots of different areas. And whether it's cooking, whether it's boxing, and it's more the orientation that one has about what one does than identifying the object, which is kind of not artificial, but often very contrived. So I find that when I travel and I start identifying the art in other things, it makes for a much more creative atmosphere, and I begin to appreciate creativity on other levels. There I saw a lot of initiative integrated into a lot of things that people were just figuring out how to do.
Like, for example?
Mechanical things, food, where you'll see a lot of things that are taken apart and the wire is taken out of them, or components are taken apart to be used for something else. Much less consumer oriented situation than ours.
Sure. Well, especially in the markets, you can see you can't go to a store to fix your bike, you know what I mean, your moto. You go to a market where there's all different kinds of stalls with everything just disassembled, and it seemed very overwhelming. And I think when I looked at stuff like that, you start to appreciate the ability to deal with things like that, like putting a motorcycle together. You can't just go have someone fix it for you at the place you bought it. That's one thing I felt too while I was there. I very seldom did I go into a store or a franchise store. It was always just like a local family or a local business that's right on the street. It was a good feeling, I think, to not go get this at a convenience store or have something like IKEA made. There's just lines and lines of handmade furniture right on the street, people making it right there. It was nice. It was a nice feeling.
Yeah, I like that connection very much as well. Can you give me one or two people that you met, I guess either expats or Cambodians?
In what sense?
That made an impression on you, that somehow made you feel more comfortable being there?
Comfortable being there. I think everybody made me feel comfortable being there. Lino and Roger were very helpful. My first meeting was with them. It was a nice introduction, I think, to Phnom Penh and Cambodia, and then they were very open to me talking with them throughout the rest of the month. Any questions? So they were very helpful. And Meta, of course, was on a phone dial away constantly. Who else? And my tuk-tuk driver in Siem Reap. He was so great. Made me feel.
This is who, Julia?
Yes. Is it Fang? Fang? Peng. Yes. He was very nice, and yeah, it was almost like we became friends. Well, because it was just me and him, and I think I spent 3 days with him, taking me all over Siem Reap. So yeah, I really liked hanging out with him, and I had a similar kind of relationship with a tuk-tuk driver outside of where I was staying. He's the one who took me to the zoo, and it's way out of sight of town, a long ways away. And when you get to the zoo, there's really nothing there. There's no staff, there's no people around really, except for a few other visitors. And then just the places where the animals are. No real information or anything. So your tuk-tuk drives you around, and at some point he and I just got out and we started walking around together in the zoo, and he couldn't speak English. I can't speak Khmer, so we were just kind of like pointing and laughing at things, but it was really fun. It was weird, but it was fun. My tuk-tuk driver.
The animals were in cages or no?
Yes, I guess that would be a loose definition. Yes, they had some fencing, but if you wanted to get up and get bit by a tiger, it was quite possible.
So I was feeding them, obviously, or something.
Yeah, they're staff. They're just not present like you normally see in a Western zoo. They're off doing something. I don't know.
Things in other countries, unless you're in Germany or something, often tend to be a lot potentially more dangerous.
Yeah.
They don't put barriers around open holes and things.
Yeah. Their road gutters are incredibly huge, and you can fall and break anything, I imagine. But they're very dangerous, and they're everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, that's just one thing out of quite a few things that are kind of dangerous.
It struck you as being potentially problematic?
No, I mean, it's kind of like, what is it they say about Amsterdam with the canals? We teach our kids how to swim, so there's nothing to worry about. I think you just are supposed to be aware of it and don't fall in it.
Okay.
But I think that would be the responsibility is on me, because I mean they need those. Otherwise, the roads would wash away in the rainy season. So I mean, it makes sense, but from my point of view, it seems really dangerous.
We try to simulate a sense of moving to a new city, which is why we put people down, and we don't want them to, we have people go on one trip, but kind of stay put. Give me some sense of what made you feel comfortable. Were you shopping at a same place each day? Was there a bar that you went to on more than one occasion?
I think, again, with the tuk-tuks, I used a specific set. It was like two brothers who I seemed to get along with, even though we communicated a little bit, but I don't know, I just liked them. I felt like they were not trying to rip me off or anything. I felt comfortable with that. So that was one, and they were just like down the street. Because when you walk around Phnom Penh, there's just all these tuk-tuks and motors are screaming for you. You need a ride. Tuk-tuk, sir. Tuk-tuk, tuk-tuk. And it could be overwhelming, so I just focused on one set that I felt comfortable with, and that made me feel good. And then there was a coffee shop around the corner. I think it's Bon Cafe. It's like a French company. I'd never heard of them before, and I didn't see it anywhere else in the city, and there was never anybody there. So I don't know how they, make any money, but I would go there every morning, just because it was delicious coffee and it was close. But those are the two that stand out right away, because they were so close from right when I walked out.
How often did you communicate with home?
I talked to my wife every other day, every day. We try to do every day through Skype. It was difficult because it's a complete opposite schedule. So when I'm going to sleep, she's getting up to go to work. But yeah, pretty regularly.
And you found you were relating your experiences?
I was telling her what was happening. I don't know if it was, because she was getting up to go to work, do her full-time job. So I don't know if she necessarily wanted to hear all of it. Like, I gotta go to work. Thanks for telling me how great your experiences are. But no, I think it was, our communication through the month was fine. I know it was difficult for her and me, but we tried to talk as much as we could.
Did you find yourself toning down how much you were enjoying yourself or anything to
No.
make it?
I just I rolled with everything, and if I was having a great time, I was having a great time, but sometimes I was conscious of like, oh, well, normally this is where I would turn and say, this is pretty great, right? Because we travel together, or we've been together for 6 years, so normally I made note, like, oh, I would have told her about it. I said, how cool is that, you know? So that stood out for the entire trip. But I don't think it took away. It's just one of those things like, oh yeah, that's sad.
So, is this the first time that you've been separated for a month?
Yep, in 6 years. So we were separated for a week once, but this is the longest.
We find, not being professional therapists or anything, that this is generally a good thing that we do for couples.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of gives you an opportunity to do something alone,
Sure.
then to relate back, and then in the future it becomes less weird.
Sure. I mean, I saw advantages while I was there. Like normally situations where I might have relied on my wife to do things or go to talk to someone, or maybe she would be the one who like goes to try to like get the tickets, talk with the person to get tickets. You know, I had to assume those roles. So I mean, as I was going throughout the month, I knew it was good for me, of course. But
Something pretty empowering.
yeah,
about,
of course.
Yeah.
Because you start to you rely on each other for different things to make you're a unit essentially. So it was definitely good to separate for a bit.
So
Maybe edit that part out.
doing all of the different things, as I said to you, we try to show people that the art world is not always the largest place, and that we encourage people to do that. Did you find that now with coming back, you'll kind of search out things that are outside of, and especially in New York City?
Yeah, where it's tremendously large art world. Yeah.
Or a tremendously large world outside of the art world.
Outside of the art world, yes. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess like going to Cambodia and Phnom Penh and experiencing how small the art world is there and how hard the artists there work to get their voices heard or get their work seen. You know what I mean? Or just overcoming simple things like finding materials. It's coming back to New York. I think it's that's something I'll hold on to when in New York, is thinking more about how I guess lucky I've been in my art practice, how convenient it's been, and I think
What do you mean?
convenient.
Yeah.
Just it's like simple things like making a ceramic sculpture. I can have clay shipped to me that's ready to go. I can mix it up and work with it, and that's like a simple idea, right? But in Cambodia, you can't just get clay ready to go. You have to, if you're not in Kampong Shanang, it's even harder. I mean, you could go to like you can't just go to an art store and get your materials. And I think that's something that's I guess made me stop and think a little bit. I know I kind of trailed off there.
No, I don't want to bring too much of my personal into this, but the idea of art materials and the ease of making art here versus art that integrates into your life maybe a little bit more in other places just because you somehow have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What was your sense of the art world there in terms of, did you feel people were frustrated? Were they creative? Were they looking toward New York too much? Were expats referencing?
I think this program kind of put me in contact with the contemporary art world there, which, like I said, seems very small. And like when I went to one event, I met quite a few people, and then I would go to another event, I would see the same ones, and I started to get the sense that it was just this really tight-knit group of artists, not necessarily expats, but Khmer people, Cambodians, trying to get their work shown. And I don't think I heard too much talk of New York. It was international exhibitions for sure, but I think
Where do they look to?
Singapore, I think was Singapore and Australia, I think is what I heard mostly.
Okay.
But I lost my train of thought there.
So what'd you think of the work that you saw? And being honest about it without having to say good or bad.
The contemporary work I saw, I thought was like in the galleries was great, and it's difficult because the art world, the art you see like on the street is made by seems to be really skilled people making beautiful paintings, but it's oriented towards tourists. You know, it's like tourist art. But I see the skill in that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated seeing that, and going to some of the few galleries that I saw, I appreciated the work that I saw there, especially specifically Sam Nang at Sasa Basak. He had his solo show Rubberman, and I was really inspired by his work, which was dealing with some of the issues that are happening in Cambodia. And I guess maybe I was hoping to find people who were making art that was political in nature, and so I guess I was satisfied or happy when I saw his show. And even though I heard him speak, and he like almost denies that it's political, it's kind of beautiful the way he says it. It's his conscience.
Okay.
But you know, and it's dealing with things that I'm totally ignorant of, like which part of the program sent me up to Ratanakiri, the northeast provinces, where they're having the land grab and the rubber plantations displacing.
Yeah, I read that.
Well, you know, I knew nothing about it, so it was interesting to see an artist in Cambodia trying to make work bring light to situations like that, which is like in my own work, I'm interested in stuff like that.
Did it make you want to bring your work to a more socially relevant place, or are you good with what
I think it made me want to think about some of the topics I've been thinking about, but approach it differently, not necessarily stick with sculpture. Because his approach to making art is the idea, and then whatever he has to do to make his idea. And I like that. I mean, I think I've heard people say that before, but just to see a result, his result, was inspiring.
So in a way, do you feel people are closer to their work, which is closer to their life, than you see here?
I don't know if I can compare the two. I just think I saw that a lot there, but more out of the situation there, and it's just dealing with what they have to deal with. Like just Samyang making that video was probably incredibly dangerous to get up in there into those rubber plantations, not to mention transporting all the materials from way up north to Phnom Penh. I mean, just difficult.
It sounds like people would just disappear if they were too problematic.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know the scope of the whole issue, but I mean, you can read things where they talk about the companies that own the rubber plantations pay police to work for them, and the military. So I don't see it out of the realm of possibility. It seemed incredibly dangerous.
Did you get any sense that any of the people in that first village, for example, would they get in trouble talking to you?
When I was up there?
Yeah.
I don't know if they would get in trouble, but the first village I went to, a policeman showed up right away. Policeman, loose term, normal looking guy with a sticker on his motorcycle that said police. And he was just, he didn't need any of my personal information, but he wanted to know exactly why I was there and the questions I was asking. And the people I was talking to they were done. Like after he left, we moved on.
So there is some intimidation, to be sure.
I think so, yeah.
But you felt politically, because it is a democracy.
Again, I don't pretend to understand it completely, but the way it was being presented to me was, I guess, democracy in quotes, more of a totalitarian government in a sense.
Oh, okay, you did feel that.
I think I just missed the actual, like if I would have went, because they just had the election, I think it was last year, and I guess that was the height of the political unrest, so I probably would have felt it tremendously then. But I think when I was there, it was all kind of dying down, like there was no one protesting, or you could see it was the little things, like we drove past their freedom of speech zone, where you go if you want to practice your freedom of speech, and it was completely fenced off with barbed wire.
Right.
So it's just, it wasn't so many instances of actions that I saw. It was just little things like noticing that free speech zone walled off, and then maybe like a few, the way some of the artists talked about their projects. Like I think Lino had mentioned you have to get certain permits just to do anything out in public. So he was starting to focus on work that kind of lightly grazed that issue, like doing performance pieces out in public. That's one of the things I talked with him with on my last day. So, and he was having trouble with that. I think just getting people to work with him because he's doing things to engage the community. So I don't know if I should talk too much about it. I don't know if it's a secret or not till it's finished, but he had a certain amount of people agreed to work with him on it, like just local people, and then the last minute, half of them backed out, just, I presume, out of fear. So it's putting together little things to get a sense of the big picture, I think, that I know very little about.
One of the things that I found very interesting is that there's a Western sense of beauty and an Eastern sense of beauty in certain things. For example, you go to a temple, and you'll go to an old temple, and as a Westerner, you're looking around going, wow, the decoration, everything is amazing. And then you see a new temple that they've built, and it's much less decorated.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one conversation that I had where I wanted to know if they had a preference. You know, do you like the old ones better than the new ones? And their response was, it's the same.
Meaning?
It's a temple.
It's a temple.
It's a temple. And for me as a Westerner, we like to dissociate imagery and just make it
That's interesting.
pretty.
A little anecdote that might go with that is we were talking about craftsmen in the country, this skilled craftsmen making maybe like jewelry, or maybe they make a really beautiful gold bracelet, right? And when it's sold in the market or wherever the store, it's sold by the weight, not on the quality of the craft, always the weight. And there's only maybe a few high-end stores that might actually mark it up higher because of the skill in the craft, which I think maybe that may correlate with like the temple is a temple, no matter the detail. Like maybe it's just something that exists in that society. I'm not sure. It's
So
hearing you say that made me think of that.
The artist is kind of encouraged to be creative for the sense of creativity without an accompanying remuneration for the amount of time put into it.
Yeah, I don't know if it applies in maybe like the contemporary art world, but because I don't know about that. I just think I only noticed it in the craft world, which skilled artists as well. But I think there's still appreciation for the work put into it at the contemporary art level. Like they actually factor that in.
We also find more people in other countries that can do things. In other words, more people are skilled because they have to be skilled, whereas here you call somebody in.
We've filtered it out.
Yeah. Your blog.
My blog.
Did you find it to be an obligation, a resource,
That's a good question.
an artwork?
I felt it to be an obligation that I tried to not necessarily make artwork, but I tried to do really well at it. Because I've never blogged before. I don't really write very often, so I really tried hard to make it a good blog. But I felt like, I felt not obligated in a bad way, but obligated to make it the best blog I could. Like put information on there that really represented my experience. And that's the way I looked at it.
Writing is one of the most difficult forms of creativity. And also one of the most communicative, I think, and concrete. We enjoyed your blog a lot.
I'm glad.
Is that going to encourage you to keep trying to write?
I don't know if I'm going to keep trying to write, but not probably. I don't know if I'll pursue it as like an artistic path.
So you've acknowledged a couple of times how much easier it is here doing what you normally do versus.
Does that sound bad?
Well, it sounds like it's a good opportunity to think about these things that have pushed you off, whether they be cooking, whether they be boxing,
Yeah.
whether they be writing. Writing is probably, again, the most difficult creative.
Yeah,
thing
and
to
important
do.
too. So I mean, just out of importance, I'll probably keep pursuing it for my my artistic path. You have to write about yourself and your work. So
Will
I'm
you-
sure.
Will you keep your blog going for us?
How long?
A year?
A year? Can I think about that one?
I guess.
Yes,
I think it would.
sure.
I think it would be like we won't. No legal action if you don't.
Okay.
But I would like to challenge you to do that.
Okay.
And you can write about your own work. You can write about anything, and use our blog as. In some places, the association with Apex is not a bad one. So
Mhm.
by using it, you can keep referring people back to it, which will also be historical for you. So it's there.
Okay.
We hope you will. Please do.
I will do it.
Could you live in Cambodia?
Yes. Absolutely. I really liked it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When are you going back?
Well, my wife wants to go, so
I'm sure.
maybe in a couple years.
Okay. That's good.
Definitely.
Any observations about how Cambodians relate to Americans or America? Do they like us?
Yes, very much so, I think. And all my interactions with Cambodians were all positive. And I know I blogged a lot about Cambodian thievery, but that was only because of people telling me about Cambodian thievery, but never a single problem. All my interactions about Cambodian thievery was, like I said, them warning me and being very helpful and almost looking after me, just complete strangers. Like people on the bus, tell me,
Yeah,
make sure you're watching your
that's nice.
bag, and but also I think more often than not on the bus rides, people would strike up conversations with me. I think almost to practice their English, but in that conversation, they would all, I'd say the majority of the time, they were either trying to get to America, or they have family in America, and they're going to go visit soon, or they're saving up money to try to get a visa to go to America. So, I mean, I got the impression that it's not a negative view of America.
Nice. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting situation when you're around people that really want to go where you're from.
Yeah.
And
It was difficult a little bit, too, at times. One conversation, might have been one of my tuk-tuk drivers, was talking about trying to visit a friend in America, and he was talking about how much money it costs just to get an interview to get a visa.
Right.
So, I mean, he had to save up $180 just to get a 10-minute interview to talk about whether or not he could even apply for a visa. And, he's gone twice, and they just, you're a tuk-tuk driver, try again later. So, as long as the conversation didn't come out after I was saying, my flight was so great getting here, that would have made me feel really bad. But it was tough to listen to, and how easy it is for me to cross the border with my passport. It's just, I guess it's kind of troubling in a way.
Are there any Khmer folks you will stay in touch with, do you think?
Lino, for sure. Roger, expat, Australian, but still Meta. And my tuk-tuk driver in Siem Reap. I'm going to stay in touch with him.
What's nice, just as a suggestion with the tuk-tuk driver, rather than trying to evolve, a real thing, Like just every so often drop them photographs, you know,
Yeah,
from New York, you know,
exactly.
on
I will.
yeah,
That's a good idea.
people really enjoy
Keep
that
them encouraged.
when they've met the American resident kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. 4 weeks, was it the right amount of time? A little too short, a little too long?
Oh.
Did you kind of,
It's probably the right amount of time for the residency, but I would have, I got into the mode where I just liked being there, so I could have stayed for months. You know what I mean? So I think there's you got to draw the line somewhere. So I think 4 weeks was nice.
but you could have stayed, interesting.
Yes,
You felt that comfortable.
I really liked it. Yeah, and I liked every part. Siem Reap I liked because of the temples, but I didn't really like. That's where I kind of didn't like being. I didn't want to be around Westerners at that point, so that was the only thing I didn't really like because I enjoyed like just being totally immersed.
So
It was kind of like a jolt back to reality.
it took you a week to become an American?
Un-American? Yeah. No, it's been a few years.
Okay. We find that people, the first week, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I was fine back home and
Definitely.
I'm kind of dropped somewhere. And
Yeah.
then the second week, it's like, you begin to know where to shop.
Sure.
People get a little familiar. It's like, yeah, this is kind of interesting.
But then you move us. I noticed that.
Within the country.
Yes.
And then the third week, it's like, damn, this is really, really interesting, and you're kind of submerged. And then the last week, it's like, oh, I go home in a week.
Yeah.
Did you find that kind of progression happening?
Yes, but except I kind of was distracted about going home because you had me traveling almost up to the last few days in Ratanakiri. So my mind was consumed with trying to understand the land grab situation up there. So it was the last 2 days. I was just like, that's where it hit me. So it wasn't like a progression. It was kind of like a ton of bricks. This is over.
So we should be leaving you in the place the last couple of days? Or was that not what you were saying?
In Phnom Penh,
Well,
where I started.
Well, I'm thinking for future situations, maybe we shouldn't have people travel in the last week.
No, I liked it. I mean,
Yeah.
rather than being focused on the fact that I have to go home
Okay.
and go back to normal, it was nice to
Okay.
not have to worry about that until the last day. And the last day is just on the schedule is packing, so it's a good time to worry about it.
Excellent.
So I was glad not to be distracted by that.
You've been a great resident. You seem to have really gotten
Good.
a lot out of it, which is
Thank you.
what we want to do.
I wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good to hear. Thank you.
my pleasure.